Today is game day for your Indianapolis Colts, and we're looking for them to show us a little something against these Los Angeles Chargers tonight under the bright lights of Monday Night Football. We'll tell you what we think here coming up on today's show. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you all for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Jake Arthur, and he's Zach Hicks making his triumphant return. He had his normal Christmas week illness, his bout with COVID once again, but he's back for us. He's doing it to him.
Yeah, it's becoming a trend now, getting COVID on Christmas. We'll see if next year I can go for the three-peat. You know, my grandparents were texting me being like, well, at least, you know, you're kind of getting used to it. You know, maybe try to change up your shtick a little bit next year. It's not as funny from year to year. But, yeah, no, I had COVID yet again. I'm getting through it right now. So if my voice still sounds a little bit off, that's why. And that's why I was not on the show at all last week. So I appreciate you covering for me, Jake, and I missed you guys. You know, I definitely missed you guys. Yeah, the COVID was not fun. It's not fun, and yeah, I'm glad to be back.
Look, man, if you don't want to go places for Christmas, there's less drastic ways to do it. You don't have to lick doorknobs and stuff.
That's what people kept accusing me of. They were like, "Oh, you just didn't want to see the family." I'm like, "Yeah, but I also had COVID."
It's like that's true.
You're not wrong. I did want to stay away, but COVID just happened to be in there, you know?
Yeah. Well, sometimes these Colts make us feel like we have COVID. And today we're going to talk about them. We're going to tell you the biggest things we're watching on offense and defense. Again, against the Chargers, Lucas Oil Stadium, 8:15 p.m. Eastern. And then at the end, we're going to tell you how we think this whole thing is going to shake out. So first, Zach, what's something big you're looking for on the Colts offense heading into this game?
Well, I was gonna leave you the quarterback thing because I feel like, you know, you're more in the groove with all the quarterback change and stuff like that. You've been talking about it all week. You've been writing about it all week.
There's so much of it.
Yeah. I'm just kind of, you know, sleepwalking my way back into this. So I'm gonna go away from quarterback. I'll let you have the big quarterback news, and I'm gonna say Bernhard Raimann versus a Chargers defensive line it's pretty solid. You know, I'm not saying it's this elite group. You know, I'm not going to say that this defensive line is anything like the Dallas Cowboys a couple weeks ago or even the Minnesota Vikings last week. But they do have some talented players. You know, Khalil Mack is going to be rushing potentially on his side in this game. Morgan Fox has been phenomenal this season, just an outstanding addition for them in free agency. And, you know, Bernhard Raimann, he's really, really progressed. I mean, in the disaster that is this Colts season, and young players not stepping up and veterans not stepping up and people having down seasons, Bernhard Raimann has been one of the biggest surprises because his first couple games were terrible. Like just downright awful. Against the Philadelphia Eagles was bad. Against the Denver Broncos, I mean, all those holding calls and those false starts. And it was very Rock Ya-Sin versus Denver Broncos in his rookie season. I mean, it was just so many penalties. But since then, I mean, Bernhard Raimann has been pretty solid. And again, that's come against some really good defensive lines against the Dallas Cowboys, against the Minnesota Vikings, and against the Pittsburgh Steelers before that. So I want to see him continue that strong play against, again, just another talented group that he's going to be facing off against. But I do think there are still some concerns and some areas to improve for him. But I just want to see if he can continue this through the rest of the season. That's one of the biggest, absolute biggest developments for the Colts down the stretch here. And so far, Bernhard Raimann has been passing a lot of tests down the stretch.
Yeah, on the crossover on Thursday with Locked On Chargers, David Drogemeyer and I actually talked about that matchup, Bernhard Raimann versus Khalil Mack, because, you know, if the anchor is Raimann's biggest issue still, or one of his kind of biggest knocks, Khalil Mack is literally a bull in human form. So that could give him a handful. But outside of that, I explained, you know, he has a few a few plays every now and then under the bright lights that make it look much worse, but overall he's progressing and getting better. Like there's just those glaring poor plays every now and then. So that is good.
Yeah.
This can be a huge test for him. I like that matchup a lot.
Yeah,
For
something
me,
I will just to interrupt
yeah.
again, Jake. Is it really a Locked On Colts podcast with me if I'm not going to interrupt you? But anyway,
Welcome back.
One thing I will say about Bernhard Raimann is if they had left tackle play like they've had the last 3 weeks all season, we might be talking about a different season this far. Would Matt Ryan have the yips back there? Would Matt Ryan look as regressed? Would the offensive line has been as leaky as they were early in the season? Because Bernhard Raimann these last 3 weeks are probably the best 3 games the Colts have gotten out of a left tackle all season. So just hats off to Bernhard Raimann in recent weeks. I know it could go south tonight against a really, really good pass rusher in Khalil Mack, but as long as Bernhard Raimann is still taking those positive steps forward, I'm calling that a win.
Yeah, I'm here for it. I mean, you got to throw him into the fire. He's going to have those tough matchups. Like, it could be rough, but I want him to go through that matchup.
Right.
So the Colts obviously made a change at quarterback this week. Out is Matt Ryan again. Nick Foles is finally getting that starting opportunity. We've been talking about it in little bursts over the last few weeks because it seemed inevitable that it would happen at some point. Sam Ehlinger promoted to the backup again. Again, we've discussed there's probably 35 million reasons not to play Matt Ryan. His cap hit next year is $35 million if he's on the team. And if he gets hurt, that obviously makes him a lot harder to bypass going into next offseason.
Right.
So Nick Foles is up to bat now. I don't really expect anything to change drastically. I still think he'll probably get sacked a couple times. He's got some, from what we saw in the summer, he's got some gunslinger to him too. So there might be a turnover, 1 or 2 picks. But what I really most want to see from him is if the downfield passing game gets opened up at all. And with that, one of the big matchups I'm looking at is Alec Pierce against Asante Samuel Jr. Samuel Jr. is coming along nicely, but Pro Football Focus has actually credited him with like 6 touchdowns surrendered this year. And the size difference is glaring. I think Samuel Jr., he's like sub 5'10", I think.
Yeah, he's tiny.
And then Pierce is obviously like 6'4", blazing speed. So that's a matchup I don't know how often it's going to happen. But their top corner, his name just escapes
JC
me.
Jackson's out for the year.
Well,
So
no,
JC
not
Jackson's
JC
out for the
Jackson.
year. Yeah.
Not him, but the other one. Chris did no. You'll see him out there regardless, but he'll probably be matched up on Pittman again.
I promise you'll see him out there.
It's a very normal name, so I can't think of it. It's basically like, John Smith, essentially.
Okay,
so no,
John Smith covering Michael Pittman Jr. That's who it's going to be.
Yeah. But no, so in his past, Nick Foles is generally, he's a above 60% passer. YPA is not terrible. His touchdown to interception ratio has always been pretty good on the whole for his career. Will take what the defense gives him occasionally, picking up the dump off and things like that. But I do think he's going to be more aggressive. So I really want to see, with Kylan Granson being out, that's more Jelani Woods downfield, Alec Pierce downfield. Why not? We have 3 games left.
Please.
Let it rip, please.
The best thing that Nick Foles could do is come out here and throw for 400 yards, like 1 touchdown and like 6 picks. I mean, I'm just saying chuck it every play.
God.
I don't care if you're completing 40% of your passes, as long as the 1 out of 5 or 1 out of 4 that you're completing are going for like big plays. Like that's all I care about. I don't need him to come out here and be Tom Brady or Peyton Manning. Just be fun. Just chuck it. Give Alec Pierce. Give Jelani Woods.
Don't be this year's Tom Brady at least.
Yeah.
Please. That's rough.
Just get out there and chuck it, Nick Foles. Come on. Nick Foles would become my favorite quarterback that has suited up for the Colts this year if he just throws downfield like every play. That's all I care about. So I'm with you. I'm excited to see him. I just want to see something else because look, Sam Ehlinger, it was a fun game against Washington, but you could tell he probably wasn't ready. And then Matt Ryan has just been a disaster for most of the season. I'm excited to see someone with a live arm that is willing to use it. I'm excited for the Nick Foles debut tonight, even if it's kind of like a garbage time game, sort of. I think it could be fun. It could be really fun.
Yeah, little huck it, chuck it football, what I'm looking forward
Yes.
to.
Yes.
We're going to get into some specific things on the defense that we want to watch for. But first, this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Tonight, PrizePicks has Foles at a more or less than 222.5 passing yards. Zach Moss with 53.5 rushing yards. The Chargers are 28th against the run, so that actually might be a good one to go with. And then Michael Pittman with 64.5 receiving yards. Kind of tempted to go a little over on both. Not drastically over on any of them, but I could see them all outperforming that. Making those type of snap decisions could earn you some serious money. It's really easy with PrizePicks, either online or their mobile app. You're just going to pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their projections, then you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. It's not just the NFL either, though. They have offer projections on any sport. That's NBA, NHL, PGA, and even cricket. I saw, Zach, you had a little PrizePicks cricket tease recently on Twitter.
I did.
Yeah. Yep. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It is that easy. Withdrawals are fast and safe as well. And PrizePicks is now operational in over 30 states and Canada. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code Locked On at sign up though for an instant deposit match up to $100. Okay, so the Chargers offer one of the more exciting offenses in the league, led by their social media quarterback. What we got there? Oh yeah. Got to show
My Chemical Romance. Swear. Oh, and then Darren Faust here corrected you. It's Michael Davis is the cornerback that you.
I told you it's such a normal name.
He's too normal. That's what it is.
I wanted to say Chris. I wanted to say Chris Davis. I thought Davis was in there somewhere. Chris Davis was a
Davis,
former
he
Charger.
came over with. Yeah, Davis came over, I think, with Gus Bradley though. So I think he's been there for a while. He's like a big guy, if I believe right. So yeah, Michael Davis goes play there, Darren.
He's playing lights out right now. But I was saying behind social media quarterback Justin Herbert, it's a pretty exciting offense. Mike Williams is out there, Keenan Allen. They got some good guys out there. So with that being said, what's one of the bigger things you're looking at for the Colts defense to try and stop them?
Yeah, so last week, me and Andrew were excitedly talking about how Dio Dangbo had the opportunity to have a big game against the Minnesota Vikings. And honestly,
and he did.
I would say it was his best career game up to that point. I mean, I think it was like nearly a 20% win percentage, pass rushing, 2 sacks. It was nearly 3 because I think he tackled Kirk Cousins for like a 1-yard gain on another one.
Yeah.
So
saved
Dio
a few
Dangbo,
first downs.
Yeah. Dio Dangbo had a great game last week, and I'm going to stay on the defensive line, and I'm going to go to Kwity Paye. Kwity Paye is the guy that I'm looking forward to. I mean, again, I don't really care about wins or losses in this one. I just want to see Kwity Paye kind of have another strong game because it feels like he started the year really well, looked really good. He looked like the perfect Gus Bradley pass rusher. Then he had that ankle injury against the Denver Broncos. And then he had the one great game against the New England Patriots once he came back. But since then, he re-aggravated it. He's just kind of been really slow since that ankle injury got re-aggravated. So I want to see that ankle just look better, and I want to see him look like Kwity Paye of early in the season because, I would say it right now, I think Kwity Paye is having, a 10, 11, 12 sack season if he doesn't get hurt. He would have been having just a phenomenal breakout year 2, and he still is having a breakout year 2. Like, it's been a very solid season for him, but I want to see him get back on pace to what he was looking like early in the season. Maybe that doesn't happen because, again, ankle re-aggravation for a pass rusher is just, it's rough business. Sometimes you just need a lot of time to fix that up. But I want to see Kwity Paye right the ship against the Chargers offensive line that for years has just kind of been below average at best. I know they've been doing some decent things this year, but this Chargers offensive line has been just below average ever since Justin Herbert's been there. And honestly, even before that with Phillip Rivers. So I want to see Kwity Paye kind of get back into the high win percentage column as a pass rusher, maybe a backup towards like 18, 19, 20% win percentage off the edge. That'd be really nice to see from Kwity. Again, just considering what we saw early in the season, I just want to see that again from him because it felt like last week, the whole Colts defensive line was getting in on the action, sacking Kirk Cousins and having productive rushes. And Quiddy even had a sack late in the game, but he felt like the only guy who wasn't having success. So I want to see, I don't care what the other guys do. I want to see Quiddy Pay and obviously Dio Dambo just continue or just kind of bounce back a little bit this week against the Chargers.
Yeah, they've got a good matchup too. Trey Pipkins on the right side, right tackle for the Chargers. Jamari Salyer's been banged up all week. He's going to play. But I think those guys could have a decent game, Dio and Quiddy. Again, with Quiddy, it's not a matter of talent or anything. It's if the ankle allows him to be super effective or not. For me, I think broken plays or, extended plays are a big part for the Chargers. Justin Herbert can get out there. He buys time. He rolls out, and he's the kind of guy that'll just flip the ball 50 yards downfield with the flick of a wrist as he's falling out of bounds. So that's almost impossible to defend. In coverage, can these guys hang with it? Because we've seen some things like that where you can't really blame a corner for finally failing and getting that, giving up that catch. So hanging tough in coverage, preparing for a quarterback that can do those types of things. And honestly, a small side note, don't have any historic collapses. That would be pretty sick, I think. Don't give up 33 points in the fourth quarter, and don't give up the biggest comeback in NFL history. But other than that, I'm simple. I don't need anything frilly. Just like don't do anything where the offense you're facing, it's never been done before. That's all.
Look, I know everyone's going to complain about that forever, but that was the perfect game for a tank. That was just the best game ever. We got to see tons of points and a really fun first half, and then the second half helped draft position. I'm not complaining about that Vikings game. That was an absolute blast. But yeah, Justin Herbert, he's on another level. Maybe he hasn't yet hit that Josh Allen or Pat Mahomes level yet, but he's still really close. Even with the team that's had so many issues, even though they are talented, the Chargers have just never been able to take that step with him and whoever's been the coach for him out there. But man, he is just so talented, and he is, if he's not in the absolute elite category, he's right next to it. So yeah, the Colts are definitely need to be prepared because yes, Kirk Cousins is one thing last week, but Justin Herbert is a completely different level. One thing I will say to that though is Brandon Faison is probably going to get a good amount of the snaps tonight, like he always does under Gus Bradley. He did have a couple good games last year against the Chargers. I remember, I think it was that win and end game last year. I think in like week 18. Brandon Faison had a really solid game against Mike Williams. I think he had like 2 or 3 pass breakups. So he has traditionally played fairly well, or at least had a good matchup with Mike Williams in terms of just them kind of throwing punches at each other. So I think that's going to be a really fun matchup to watch. But again, at the end of the day, Justin Herbert, man, he was really good. I know the Raiders played them pretty tough last year with Gus Bradley's defense, but this Colts team is kind of going in the wrong direction, and this Chargers team is going in the right direction. So we'll see if this Colts defense kind of steps up. But before we bring you guys our much anticipated predictions, we have to discuss something pretty serious here with New Year's Eve coming up. You're hanging out with some friends and putting back a few drinks. A few becomes a few too many. And as the evening comes to an end, people start to head out. You think of calling for a ride. Nah, you live nearby. You can make it home okay. It's no big deal. What are the odds that you get pulled over anyway? And even so, what's the worst that could happen? Your insurance goes up. You lose your license. You lose your job. You total your car. You kill someone. Everyone knows about the risk of driving drunk. The results are tragic and often deadly. However, that still doesn't stop anyone from getting behind the wheel while under the influence. That's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads to save lives. So if you think you're okay with driving after a few drinks, think again. Play it safe and plan ahead to get a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. All right, Jake, so let's jump into our predictions. And I'm going to let you go first here because I know you've been more active covering this game all week than I have with me fighting through my sickness. But I see here from your prediction, you have them as a pretty close game, man. Do you think the Colts hang with the Chargers in this one?
Yeah, I usually don't do very well giving the Colts the benefit of the doubt. I don't have them winning, but I just have them, having a performance like they actually have been the past few weeks, but not having that big meltdown late. So the Chargers getting a lot of close games. I do give them the edge just because their firepower is much better than the Colts. I have it at 20-17 Chargers. I think the Colts defense, they've shown numerous times throughout the season they can hang tough for a while. They can get some of those takeaways. They can get sacks, things like that. Like you mentioned, Justin Herbert isn't quite into that alien level yet. He's knocking at the door. He's really good, but he is still young. I do think the Colts could force him into a couple mistakes. Yeah, that's why I have it being so close. I can't anticipate yet another huge meltdown. Maybe it's 2017 going into the fourth, and then it's 52-17. I don't know. But yeah, I'm going to give the Colts the benefit of the doubt, and they're going to keep it to a 3-point game, but I'll give it to the Chargers.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see it kind of staying low. My problem with the Colts defense lately, though, is they are still coming out strong early in games, but they are just losing their legs in that second half a lot recently. We saw it against the Steelers 4 weeks ago. We saw it against the Cowboys 3 weeks ago. And then last week, obviously, against the Vikings. This defense, they're just struggling to kind of stand tall late in games, where earlier in the season, they were standing tall throughout the entire course of games. It's kind of been a struggle in recent weeks. So I think I'm going to go 34-23 in favor of the Chargers. I just think Justin Herbert is kind of on a roll lately and playing some really good football. With the Colts kind of trending down, the Chargers trending up. I do think this is going to be a game where the Chargers kind of, I could see this being like a 34-13 going into the fourth quarter, and then the Colts, score, a couple meaningless field goals or points there in the fourth to make it look a little closer. But yeah, I do think these are two teams on just different wavelengths right now. I do think Nick Foles is going to bring more of a fun element to the Colts offense, and they might have some more big plays and more scores, but I do think it'll lead to more turnovers, and you don't want to give the short field to Justin Herbert. So we'll see. The Colts will have to tackle tonight. They'll have to defend every single throwing lane with Justin Herbert, and they'll have to improve upon what we've seen these last couple of weeks. So I do think this is not a game where the Colts are completely outclassed by just that much of a better team, but if recent history suggests what's going to happen tonight, I do think the Chargers are gonna roll away with this for like another 10+ point victory against the Colts.
Yeah, and I think an important note is the Chargers have everything to play for in this one, because if they win tonight, then they are in the playoffs. The Colts are just playing for pride right now, and that's not something they've always done well, playing for pride. Obviously, they've given up some pretty embarrassing losses. Derwin James is back. That's a big factor. If you have someone like Jelani Woods having a big game, then they have the ultimate chess piece to put against him in Derwin James. So Nick Foles is the big X factor. How does the offense look under him? Do they have any rhythm? Can they maintain? Oh no, that can't be.
It can't be that bad.
Scott Tolzien had no arm strength. That guy couldn't throw an out route to save his life.
So if you guys are just listening to this, Darren just said that he has a feeling Nick Foles' debut will end up like Scott Tolzien's against the Rams in 2017. I feel comfortable saying it won't be that bad, but it could be really bad. That seems a little much, because we've seen Nick Foles for 3 different teams now, or this is his 3rd team or his 4th different team, I think, and he's been fine. Like even at his worst, he's been like fine. Like he's never been like atrocious anywhere. Like he's obviously been in an overpay with the Jaguars, and with the Bears he really wasn't much, but he's never been Scott Tolzien versus the Rams bad. Yeah. So I don't see that happening, but who knows? I'm not going to rule anything out this season. One thing I will say about the Colts though is they might not be on the same dysfunctional level as like the Broncos right now, where the Broncos were throwing fights on, or throwing punches on the sideline and stuff like that, and that dysfunction. But I do have a feeling, wink, wink, feeling that in the locker room, it's just not a great place right now. Ifedi Adenigbo was just waived this last week, and it's not because of the penalty at the end of the game. It's more for, other stuff in that locker room. The locker room's in a bad place right now. So it wouldn't shock me if the Colts just kind of come out and just lay an egg, because, the team is just not into it right now, which it's hard. Like it's hard to get up for these type of games when you're as bad a team as what the Colts are. But, they're like an older team that's struggling right now. So it's not like they're like a young team that wasn't expected to have to come out and win. They're a team that has a lot of veterans and has a lot of pride, and they've had their pride shot a lot in recent weeks. And we've seen some bad things. We've seen veterans being waived. We've seen Naeem Hines request a trade out. We've seen coaches fired. Our veteran quarterbacks benched. Like, I don't know how much energy this team has left. Like, it wouldn't shock me if these last couple games are just absolute beatdowns, because it's just hard to kind of go through all this adversity in one season and keep coming up short against this adversity, and then going against talented teams like the Chargers and the Giants next week. These are playoff teams that are playing for something. The Colts aren't playing for anything, and they've had their pride punched in a couple weeks in a row. So yeah, I wouldn't rule anything out from disastrous losses, because eventually, we've seen a lot of cracks and we've seen some embarrassing losses recently. Eventually it's just going to explode. Like, we've seen some bad things. So I don't know. I think that the Colts are in a really bad place right now, and the Chargers are fighting for their playoff lives. So it wouldn't shock me whatsoever if the Chargers come out and just show the whole world those two things.
Yeah. I mean, again, the Colts have nothing really to play for other than pride, which hasn't been enough. And the Chargers, this could be a statement. I mean, as much as a statement against the Colts could be, but they're given an opportunity to win, and you're in, and they could do that. So yeah, I don't know. I think you're right. As much as I could see it being this close game that I have it predicted with 3 points, recent history, literally what we've seen from them on the field, dictates that it could be totally different. So I would not be surprised either way. Shoot, that's it for me. You got any more nuggets on this one?
3 more games, guys. 3 more games. That's all we have to get through. 3 more games. But are we going to do a post game tonight, Jake? Are we doing a post game on this?
Yeah, I mean, I don't anticipate getting home until like 2 a.m. anyway, so I'm down. Yeah.
Oh, Lord. All right, we'll see. We'll see how the game goes, guys, if we'll do a post game. If you guys are even excited for it, we'll see. So make sure you guys tune in.
It'll be Zach's flu game if we do it.
My flu game after we just get beat down or something. But yeah, make sure you guys tune in for that, because that could be really fun. Follow at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at Zach Hicks 2, all on Twitter. And also subscribe to the Locked On Colts podcast on YouTube, wherever you listen to the show. And thank you again for making us your first listen of the day. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. We'll see you guys later tonight. Maybe.